Welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales, proudly presented by Membrain. This podcast is your gateway to mastering the craft of modern selling. If you're passionate about growth, impact, and unlocking full potential in sales and revenue, you're in the right place. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And now let's get started with today's guest.
Hey everybody, today we are talking with Colleen Stanley, and she is a 3-time author and CEO of Sales Leadership Inc. Her latest book is awesome. Highly recommend it to everybody. It is called Be the Mentor Who Mattered. It's about building into the next generation of people and how we can do that well, and really how that impacts us in life and business. So let's get started with Colleen Stanley. Colleen, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for coming.
Oh, Paul, thank you for having me. Good to reconnect. It's been too long.
It has been, and I'm super excited for you. So you have to tell us what's been going on in your world, because you got a big event coming up.
We have a big event. Thank you for allowing me to toot and hoot here. You know, our official book launch, and I'll hold up a picture of the book, Be the Mentor Who Mattered, is we're doing the hard launch, Paul, on November 4th. So we're really excited about it because it's been a real passion project for me and my co-author. So we're really excited to release this to the public.
Well, I've had a chance to preview it, and I can say absolutely this is a must read, and it's a must read from my perspective because of where your heart is on this and what you communicate. And why don't you just share a little bit about that, if you don't mind?
Sure. You know, because I've had people ask, Paul, like, you know, why'd you write a book on mentorship after 2 books on sales and sales leadership? So it literally started with a hike in the foothills of Colorado, where we live. And it was almost like divine intervention coming down saying, be the mentor who mattered. I mean, I didn't even know where this title came from, but I knew enough that I thought, you know, I'm going to buy the URL on this. And didn't do anything with it for a few years, but it kept rolling around in my head. And something that I have done for years is that in my morning time, which I, practice quiet time every morning, gratitude, meditation, prayer, I always gave thanks for the mentors I had in my life. And so I finally thought, it's time to write a book, not only to thank these mentors, but also really bring alive again the topic of mentorship and get people more motivated to step up and help up. So it came about for a variety of reasons.
Well, and it's interesting. You're coming at this topic of mentorship, I think, at a perfect time. And the real reason I think it's a perfect time, especially in sales, is because I do think that we need to be more effectively learning the lessons of the past. What it takes to be a really effective communicator and a really effective servant and leader. And I believe the best way to do that is through coaching and mentorship. But with the shifting and the change all around us, right, the one thing that we can control is how much we pour into others.
You know what? That's a really good way of saying it because, in a world and we're all talking about it and we've always talked about it, but today the change is happening. It's seismic with, artificial intelligence. And then, the change that occurred after the pandemic, many teams that reported into offices now go to remote working. And, I managed a team of remote sellers 25 years ago, right? But here's the difference. You didn't have technology back then. So yes, tell your viewers I'm 100 years old, diet and exercise, okay? And so people are like, you didn't have technology. However, here's what that did. So I had a lot of field reps and you spent hundreds of hours in the car. And so you had that time to build connection and community. I would get invited at the end of the day of riding with a rep to a family's home. So I'd meet the husband or the wife. And so this is where we have to look at the change and why mentorship is so much more important because of some of those changes.
When you're calling that like the perfect storm, right, in terms of why mentorship really matters. So we have this massive seismic changes. We have, I think the most important word in artificial intelligence right now is artificial, but we have a lot of artificial things that are happening and a lot of more people that promote image more than being real. So what is this perfect storm that you talk about in the book?
Well, one is just what I addressed here. I talk
Hmm.
about the breakdown, and the first storm would be the breakdown in community. And so for the audience today, it might be the breakdown of the business community where people really don't know how to build community with remote environments there.
Hmm.
And even what I've seen, and it kind of ties into the second storm of the unintended consequences of social media and technology. What I have observed a lot in the business community is people will come into a meeting. Now, let's say it's a face-to-face meeting, right? And so what do they do? They are typing, they've got sweat going off their brow because they're trying to send off that last email, and they're not even talking to the person left and right of them. And again, back in the quote good old days, you went into a meeting to meet and have a conversation. So you've even seen it on Zoom where people, when they report in, they're doing chats on the side, etc. So there's been a breakdown there. The second storm I talk about is the unintended consequences of social media. And you touched on it. My concern is that, with social media, there's hard stats. And in the book, I talk about Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation. And it's directly linking technology and social media. And I've got some of the stats here, so I'm going to look away because I didn't want
Yeah.
to screw it up. So he has noted with his research that suicide rates in the youth, in young women, 167% increase, young men, 91%. Depression rates in our adolescents, increase of 145%, 161. Now, what's interesting, this started with the onset of the the smartphone when you could take pictures. So what's happening, you got the comparison game going on, but in corporate America, you've got the self-absorption game going on, right?
Yeah.
So just what you said, we're so concerned about our business or our own image, but the fact is the more self-absorbed you become, and the less other absorbed, the more depressed you become. So when you can create other absorbed cultures, that's when you have peer mentoring going on. That's when you have elders mentoring youth and youth mentoring the elders there. And then the final storm I talk about is that accelerated pace of change. It's like the whack-a-mole game out there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I've mastered this new set of skills. Well, you don't get to breathe anymore. There's a new set that come up. And so one of the points I make is we can't go it alone anymore. I mean, I was kind of a lone ranger sales rep. You can't be a lone ranger anymore because you cannot keep up with the knowledge and information that's coming at us. So those three non-weather related storm fronts are creating the need for mentorship, helping one another. Mhm.
Right, increasing, yeah, I 100% agree, and increasing the need. And the interesting thing that I see as well is with the advent of with AI and the advent, you started
Mhm.
with this idea. It's called the Google effect, right? That people could have a bunch of information but a very little understanding, right? So
Yes,
because
yes.
we have all the answers, but we have very little way to actually leverage that information and use it in our life appropriately.
Hmm.
And there's been a period that we've gone through where that at the beginning of that period, I think people were like, oh, wisdom, we don't need that. I can Google everything now.
Right.
But truly in the creation of wisdom, right, which is to be able to leverage that information for the good of yourself and others.
Hmm.
Um, mentorship is critical, is it not? It's where we've always gone in these times. We've always looked to the elders, the past, the people that have been there, and the people that have built into others. Um, why has it been pushed to the side, do you think? Because it has.
And it has. It's interesting because it's not a new topic, Paul. I mean, that was one of the concerns I had in writing the book. I wanted to bring in new information. I believe the reason it's being pushed aside is that we live in a hurried and harried society. And in fact, Gallup for years has said people will stay longer, they'll be more engaged if they have a best friend at work. Well, if your manager is hurried and harried, and maybe they're having the coaching session or the meeting, but they're checking their phone, and you can just tell by their energy, like we got to get through this. So nobody is feeling valued or important. So the hurried and harried society has pushed aside mentorship because mentorship, in some cases, will take time. Mentorship can also happen in a moment. It can happen in a conversation. However, as I pointed out with some of the stories, you have to be paying attention. So a hurried and harried person isn't looking up. they're not catching the nonverbal cues where, you know what, this individual could use a little bit more attention. So I think that's the reason it's been pushed aside.
Well, I see that. I'm just looking at the own group. I work with a lot of high schoolers, a lot of kids around,
Mhm.
and it's interesting the dynamic. And then you see it in businesses too, when you have this and there's a bunch of people that are just all the time, their faces in their phone, hurried and harried, right?
Mhm.
It's an always on addicted. The time, but then you give the times when it's impossible. You don't allow that. And you're allowed to do that, like in a group of teenagers, right? Everybody put their phone here. This is what we're going to
Mhm.
do. We're going to have time together. And the
Yes.
difference in how people pay attention, and it's something we lose when we're hurried and harried and too much in devices. And
Yeah.
and so why did you start this? Like, who was the mentor to you that just said, man, I have to pass this on to others. I have to make this a big point to people.
You know, in the book, I feature 14 of my own mentor stories. And here's my hope that it didn't look or sound like I was trying to pat myself on the back. It was really patting those mentors on the back. And I will say one that really stood out for me is Klein Boyd. And he was my boss and mentor. And I would say he was one of these individuals that had very high IQ and really high EQ. And so, you know, one of the stories I share in the book is when I was newly promoted to regional sales manager. And Paul, I am overwhelmed, right? Because I was with a startup that
Mhm.
blew up. So they gave people like me who didn't have a lot of experience and opportunity. But I'm sitting in my office and I'm kind of like, man, I hope nobody finds out that I don't know what I'm doing. And Klein was paying attention because he was not my direct boss at the time. He was the general manager. And he came into my office, and I won't tell the whole story, but the purpose of the conversation was to reassure me that you were going to be okay. And Colleen, you have the ability. And I call that a mentor moment. But the fact is, he was paying attention. And then I can tell you story after story of where, even during a performance review, he called me on behavior that wasn't appropriate. I was hitting the numbers as VP of sales at that time, but I wasn't applying the golden rule. I was getting so busy, so task focused, I wasn't looking left or right. And frankly, he didn't care about the sales. He cared about how I treated people. So it was a really interesting performance review because I was hitting the numbers. I wasn't hitting the core values that he espoused and call it the golden rule or the platinum rule. So he was a very, very impactful mentor in my life. And I could tell you statements, mentor moments that I still apply and think about today. And that's been 25 years since I've been with the company.
That is absolutely wonderful. And what I love about this book and your approach on it is you're not just focusing on your mentor stories, but you have, I think, what, over 35 or 40 stories in
Yeah,
there,
we've got
like the whole
about
back of
20,
that.
25 stories of
Okay.
others' mentors.
Others mentors. Yeah, there
Yes.
it's amazing. How did you how did you land on making that a part of the book and then actually driving people to give their stories? Because there's a couple in there that I read that were just really impactful and wonderful.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. You know, I think it came when my co-author, Leanne Tiemann, she worked with the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. I think she's got like 14 books under her belt, right? So we were up at her cabin and I was, you know, sharing my vision for this book a couple years ago. And I said, you know, I want to write my stories and I want to gather stories. And I think it was maybe that Chicken Soup for the Soul influence I had, you know, growing up.
Mhm.
And Leanne said, you know, Colleen, there's a real difference in writing a personal story than a business book like you have. I'd like to help. I mean, there is no talk of let's share royalties. You know, she's not looking at back end business. She comes from a healthcare background. She's a keynote motivational speaker there. And so that's how it came about is that I had a vision and somebody else helped me bring that vision to life. And then I will tell you, Paul, I just kept my eyes open for mentor stories. Like one gentleman who contributes the story, he had written a letter to the editor in the Wall Street Journal about how he developed this program called Craftsmen with Character, where he's teaching young people the trades and also teaching moral integrity and values. So I literally read that letter to the editor. I looked him up on LinkedIn. I reached out to him. We had a Zoom call, and the story came from there. So, and then I had some colleagues that I knew that, wow, I think I know their background. So it was a lot of work, I can tell you that, but very rewarding once we got all the stories in.
So one thing that that I'm interested in is you do come from a spot of writing business books, and you got a couple of great books
Hmm.
on sales and that type of stuff, and you're selling them into the organizations, and you can train and coach and based on that mentorship. Like I have this idea that mentorship actually should be that same type of have that same type of business impact, if not more. Is
Hmm.
that something that you're finding that business leaders and owners and people that you talk to grasp this concept of mentorship and then coaching and say, dang, maybe this is what we're missing in our business?
Here's what I think, Paul. My observation has been the books on mentorship that are out there are very, very good. Okay. However, often a book might feature really famous people and they will tell their story of mentorship. So then I think the self-limiting belief is, well, I'm not going to be a famous person, or I don't have a famous person to mentor me. Now, remember, those stories are important. You also have books that are very buttoned up. Okay, here's how you do mentorship. You have goals, benchmarks, progress reports. But again, if you're a small company and a mid-sized company, you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, that's just one more to-do list. So my goal with the book was to have people realize mentorship can happen every day in a moment in a conversation. And yes, in long-term relationships. So I was surprised by the reaction that when we started introducing this concept, that people are like, yeah. But I think they think you've either got to have this big degree, big office, or really formalized program to execute mentorship. You don't. It's like you said, you have to look up from your phones, stop being so hurried and harried, and simply pay attention to other people. And we give some tips in the last, I think it's the last chapter of the book, where I tried to make it easy. So, for example, tack it on to something else you do. And so, if you're somebody that goes to the gym, invite your mentee to go to the gym, take a walk. And so if it's things that you're going to be doing anyway, tack it on to that so it doesn't become one more to-do list. And then the other thing I challenge people is that, we all have 30 minutes. We all have 60 minutes in a month, right? And so maybe you need to do a time audit and see where you're investing time right now, because I bet you're wasting time. Like I can waste time watching bad news. I can waste time scrolling and rolling as much as I know how not good it is for you. You can find 30 minutes. And that's a challenge I ask everybody to look at.
Yeah, especially it's interesting. In my old business, I'm fully remote now. We have people all over the world and that type of stuff. But one of the practices that I put in my leader there taught me how to do was just the everyday lunch
Yes.
for and every day was someone different, right?
Yes.
Which is and as a leader, actually just taking the time to buy the lunch. I mean, at that time it was like $8. We weren't
Yeah,
going
exactly.
anywhere fancy. It didn't make a whole lot of difference where you went. It was just that time to just be with instead of be demanding of, right? And
Yes.
it was
Yes.
it changed my trajectory. So I was really hopeful. I was really happy and to learn that skill, and that's really this type of thing that you're talking about. It stop making it this huge big thing. Oh my gosh, I'm not qualified to be a mentor. Just be with.
Yes.
Um,
Because you have the intelligence. It was interesting when you said artificial intelligence. We need more mentor intelligence
mm,
because, I'm mentoring a young college student right now, and, she's eager. I have probably forgotten more than she knows right now. And so and that's not a brag thing. That's just taking a lot of,
mm,
face plants, learning from them. And so it's interesting if you will simply be open and then honest with the person saying, I think you're looking at that the wrong way. Like I'm trying to give her guidance on which industries to look at for jobs. So sometimes as young graduates, they're looking at the tech companies, and those are great. They don't know that there's companies out there that build playgrounds, because I get into a lot of different industries.
yeah.
So they don't even know the industries to be looking at to consider where their talent or their degree might pay off. And so, yeah, sometimes it's just mentor intelligence, looking up, taking the time, sharing what you know, and it doesn't have to be that hard.
Well, yeah, no, I love the message. I love what I've read of the book. From what I've read, it's a must read, and I will be finishing it. And I already asked you for the signed copy because it is one that's going to go on the bookshelf.
Oh, yay. Okay.
Yeah. How do other people participate in this and find you and find the book?
They can definitely go to our website, which is salesleadershipdevelopment.com. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. We do have a book landing page, Paul, that we'll probably start putting up after that November 4th launch. And we actually have a book bonus. So we give them a guide on how to get started. And so it's a like step by step. Okay, think of your mentors. What impact did they make on you? What talents do you have to share? So it might be hard skills. Like you might be somebody that's just really good at financial business acumen. It could be a soft skill, like you're great at emotional intelligence, emotion management. And so everybody's got something to contribute. And then we help them with how do you actually do it without, I love your words, without making it this big thing. Because again, my mentors, I'll share another quick story. My first boss, Don Trandom, is, and I share this story in the book. Well, he actually gave me my first opportunity in sales management. And then when I was promoted to regional sales manager, unfortunately, I was also going through a divorce. And I'm telling you, I was one depressed kid. Now, nobody knew it. I've always been good at compartmentalization. And so here's what's interesting. I was getting ready to go home for Thanksgiving. I grew up in Iowa, and I'm kind of dreading it, Paul, because, it's that first year. Why didn't it work? And I don't know. It wasn't on the goal board. And Don spoke up to me and goes, "Hey, Colleen, would you like to come back early from your vacation? I could use help with budgets." Now, let me be clear. Don needed no help with budgets. He's a finance whiz. In fact, any territory planning that I've ever learned was from him. I think he was reading the situation. She's dreading it. And it was not because of my family or anything like that. And I was so happy to come back early that I was like, yeah. And so it's just little things like that I still remember that act of kindness. He probably doesn't. I'll guarantee you, he probably doesn't, but I do. So be really intentional about how you show up every day because you're making a difference.
I love that. I love that. And everybody out there, please, when this book drops, make sure it's on your list. Make sure you're reading it. Go connect with Colleen on LinkedIn, website, and the book page is coming out soon. Is it also going to be on like Amazon? Do they get to hear you reading this on Kindle by any chance, or on the?
Yes, the Kindle will be coming out. We will be coming out with that. We've got the book done. Now the next thing is for me to record the book, and I think I actually, Paul, I'd love your opinion. I think I need to find a male counterpart because we have some stories, obviously, from men, and I don't know how good that's going to come across with a woman reading their stories. So
just let me know.
Work on that one.
Just let me know. I know I the voice is just coming through silkily on the microphone. I know that was your subtle way of asking, but
all right, you're on.
All right. Well, hey, oh, excuse me. Now I cough. Thank you so much. Bless you for this work.
Thank you, Paul.
It is awesome. It's elevating the sales profession and it's elevating everything that we believe in. So keep shining bright. It's awesome.
I appreciate your support on this. And you keep up the good work that you are blessed with doing your work, and also the good wife that you have, that you're raising 3 kids, because obviously mentors can be terrific mentors as well. So
amen. Well, with that, everybody, we will sign off for today from the Art and Science of Complex Sales. Have an amazing day. Keep shining bright, keep selling well, and we'll talk with you soon.